The void of space stretched endlessly before the Vindication as it crossed into what the Galactic Council called regulated territory. Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge watching the star charts update in real time. Her crew had worked for 3 years to build Earth's first faster-than-light vessel, and she'd be damned if some alien bureaucracy was going to tell them where they could and couldn't go. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission," said Communications Officer Park on screen. The view screen flickered to life, showing a being that looked like a mix between a mantis and a seal. Its triangular head tilted as it regarded the human vessel with what might have been curiosity or contempt. "Unregistered vessel. This is High Arbiter Kelthan of the Galactic Council," the alien said in perfect English, though the translation matrix gave its voice an odd echoing quality. "You have entered Council-regulated space without authorization." Elena crossed her arms. "This is Captain Elena Vasquez of the Earth vessel Vindication. Where?" "On a peaceful exploration mission." Kelthan's sad appendages twitched in what the cultural database suggested was amusement. "All emerging species believe their missions to be important. You will power down your faster-than-light drive immediately and await processing. A council evaluation team will arrive within 6 standard rotations to begin your civilization's assessment period." "Assessment period?" Elena asked. "How long does that take?" "For a species of your technological level, approximately 50 of your years," Kelthan replied, as if discussing the weather. "During this time, you will be restricted to your home system. Upon successful evaluation, you will be granted limited spacefaring privileges and may apply for provisional council membership within 2 to 3 centuries. Elena felt her jaw tighten. 50 years. The crew of the Vindication would be dead or ancient before Earth got permission to do what they were already doing. She looked around at her bridge. Crew park barely contained a scowl navigator. Chum had stopped pretending to work and was watching the exchange with wide eyes. Weapons Officer Rodriguez had her hand hovering near the defensive systems console. "High Arbiter Kelthan," Elena said slowly and clearly, "we acknowledge your transmission and your stated regulations. However, we will be continuing our mission as planned." The silence that followed was profound. Kelthan's entire body went rigid. "You acknowledge but refuse to comply?" "That's correct. This is unprecedented," the alien said, and for the first time emotion crept into its voice. "Every species that has achieved faster-than-light capability in the last 100,000 years has submitted to council authority. You cannot simply ignore a galactic law." Elena smiled, though there was no warmth in it. "Watch us Vindication out." She made a cutting motion, and Park killed the transmission. "Helm, plot a course to the Epsilon system best speed." "Captain, are you sure about this?" Chun asked. "They have thousands of ships. We have one. And if we stop now, we're telling them and everyone back home that humans need permission to explore the universe." Elena replied, "I didn't spend 3 years in a tin can traveling to Alpha Centauri and back to prove the drive worked just to be put in timeout by aliens who think they own space." The Vindication's engines flared to life, and the ship leaped forward into the darkness. Behind them, Elena knew that somewhere in the vast council bureaucracy alarms were probably sounding. She didn't care. 3 weeks later, the Vindication entered the Epsilon system and found a world that took Elena's breath away. Epsilon 4 was a jewel hanging in space with blue oceans and green continents visible even from orbit. The atmospheric readings showed breathable air with higher oxygen content than Earth. No intelligent life, no settlements, no claim markers. This planet isn't on any of the council databases, Park reported, because they haven't gotten around to claiming it yet. Rodriguez muttered, 50,000 years of spaceflight, and they're still filing paperwork on which rocks belong to who. Elena made a decision. Send a message back to Earth. Command, tell them we've found a world suitable for colonization. Include all survey data and our current coordinates. Captain, they'll call us crazy, Chum said. Probably. Elena agreed. Do it anyway. The message shot across the light years, carried by quantum entanglement communicators. Back on Earth, the response was immediate, and exactly what Elena expected. Earth Command told her to avoid antagonizing. The Council of the United Nations sent a formal diplomatic message. The media called her Reckless Elena. Ignored all of it. 6 months after the Vindication's first contact with the Council, a dozen more human ships crossed into Council space. Each one received the same transmission from increasingly agitated Council representatives. Each one gave the same response: noted and continuing mission. Humans scattered across nearby systems like seeds on the wind. Where they found suitable planets, they landed. Where they found resources, they mined. Where they found mysteries, they investigated. The Council sent increasingly stern warnings. Humanity sent back polite acknowledgments and kept moving. In the Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council, High Arbiter Kelthon stood before the assembled representatives of 200 civilized species. The humans refuse all directives. It reported, they acknowledge our authority and then ignore it completely. This has never happened before. A delegate from the aquatic nereid species rippled its tentacles. Perhaps they do not understand the consequences of defying the Council. They understand perfectly. Kelthon said, I have reviewed the transmissions. They are not ignorant primitives. They simply do not care about our regulations. Then we must enforce compliance. Rumbled a delegate from the warrior Krenth. Send ships, impound their vessels. Show them that Council law is not optional. Kelthon's head appendages drooped. I have submitted that exact recommendation. The enforcement fleet is being assembled. However, I feel compelled to note that in my review of the humans' brief history, they have a concerning pattern. Which is? Asked the Nereids delegate. When told they cannot do something, they tend to do it anyway and deal with the consequences. Later, their entire civilization seems built on the concept of asking forgiveness rather than permission. Then perhaps it is time they learned that some authorities do not forgive. Back on the Vindication, Elena reviewed the latest reports from Earth 20 Venid. Ships, now 5,800 humanity, had tasted the freedom of the stars, and no amount of alien bureaucracy was going to put that genie back in the bottle. She thought about her daughter back on Earth, who would grow up in a universe where humans didn't ask permission to reach for greatness. That thought made everything worth it. Captain. Incoming transmission from Earth Command. Park said, Admiral Hazan wants to speak with you directly. Elena straightened her uniform, put him through. The Admiral's weathered face appeared on screen. Captain Vasquez, you've started something that can't be stopped. I know, sir. The Council is assembling a fleet. Intelligence suggests they're planning to force compliance. Let them try. Hassan smiled grimly. That's what I told the Security Council. Where? Accelerating the shipbuilding program. If the Council wants a confrontation, they'll get one. But Elena? Sir? Make sure what you started is worth the price we might have to pay. Elena looked out at the stars. It is, sir, it absolutely is. The transmission ended, and Elena returned to watching the endless void somewhere out there. The Council was preparing to teach humanity a lesson. Humanity was preparing to teach them one right back. The age of asking permission was over. The age of taking what was theirs had begun. 6 months had passed since the Vindication first ignored the Council's demands, and now the galaxy was learning what that defiance looked like. New Chengdu colony sprawled across the northern continent of Epsilon 4 with prefabricated habitats, housing 5,000 colonists who had made the long journey from Earth. Governor Marcus Webb stood in the colony's command center reviewing the latest agricultural reports when the proximity alarms began screaming. Sir, we have incoming vessels, reported Scanner Chief Williams. Configuration matches Council. Enforcement cruisers, 20 of them. Marcus felt his stomach tighten, but kept his voice steady. Sound general quarters. Get everyone to shelters. Activate the defense grid. Governor, the defense grid isn't even supposed to exist. Williams said, The Council banned weapon systems on colony worlds. Good thing we didn't ask their permission, then activated. The colony had been built with Earth's newest technology reverse-engineered from captured Council data cores that human hackers had liberated from poorly secured Council databases, what the Council thought was impossible. Humanity had achieved in months rather than decades. Sometimes, desperation was the best teacher. The Council fleet dropped out of faster than light. Travel in a perfect formation, designed to intimidate, their lead vessel was 3 times larger than anything humanity had built. Its hull gleamed with the polished arrogance of a civilization that had never been seriously challenged to transmission. Arrived almost immediately. Illegal settlement, you are in violation of Galactic Council Regulation 7312. Announced a Council officer whose species Marcus didn't recognize. You will evacuate this planet within 1 standard rotation or face forcible removal. Marcus opened a channel. This is Governor Marcus Webb of New Chengdu Colony. This planet was uninhabited and unclaimed when we arrived. We're not going anywhere. The Council determines which worlds are available for colonization. The officer replied, "This world was pending allocation. Your presence here is illegal." Pending allocation, Marcus repeated. How long has it been pending? Approximately 14,000 years. Marcus laughed. It wasn't a pleasant sound. 14,000 years, and you still hadn't gotten around to actually doing anything with it. That's not a claim, that's bureaucratic hoarding. Your opinion of Council procedures is irrelevant. You have 1 rotation to evacuate. No. The single word hung in space between them. Then you leave us no choice. We will begin removing your colonists by force. I wouldn't recommend that. The Council officer's face twisted into what might have been a smile. You have no weapons. Our scans show only civilian infrastructure. Your scans are about to be updated. Marcus nodded to Williams, who activated the defense. Grid 20 concealed batteries rose from camouflage positions around the colony's perimeter. Each one tracked a different Council vessel with targeting lasers. The orbital platform they'd secretly assembled piece by piece in the shadow of Epsilon. Ivy's larger moon lit up with active sensors. What is this? The Council officer demanded. This is a violation of regulations we never agreed to follow. Marcus interrupted. You want this colony? Come and take it. The standoff lasted for hours. The Council fleet held position, clearly waiting for orders from higher authority. The colonists waited in their shelters, knowing that if shooting started there, flimsy habitats wouldn't protect them from orbital bombardment. But Marcus was gambling that the Council had never faced actual resistance before. He was betting they wouldn't know how to respond to someone who simply refused to be intimidated. Finally, a new transmission arrived this time. It was High Arbiter Kelvin itself. Governor Webb, the Council has authorized a demonstration of force. One of your outlying structures will be destroyed. This is your final warning. Arbiter, with respect, if you fire on my colony, I will consider it an act of war and respond accordingly. You have no authority to declare war. Watch me. Marcus cut the transmission and turned to his defense coordinator. If they fire on anything, you have authorization to return. Fire target their weapon systems only. I want to disable, not destroy. Sir, they'll vaporize us. Maybe, but Earth will know what happened here, and they'll make the Council regret it sometimes. You have to be willing to die for something to prove it matters. The Council fleet maneuvered into position. One of their cruisers charged its main weapon, targeting an automated mining station 3 kilometers from the main colony. Marcus held his breath. The Council fired a beam of coherent energy, lanced across the sky, and the mining station exploded in a ball of superheated metal before the debris had finished falling. New Chengdu's defense batteries returned fire. 20 pulse cannons spoke as one. The shields on the Council cruiser flared bright enough to be seen with the naked eye. They held for exactly 3 seconds before collapsing. The Human weapons chewed through the cruiser's armor plating and disabled its weapon systems in a surgical strike that left the crew alive, but the ship combat ineffective. Council fleet scattered in confusion. They had expected capitulation or perhaps a futile gesture of defiance. What they got was a coordinated military response from a colony that wasn't supposed to have any military capability at all. Ceasefire. Kelvin's voice crackled across all frequencies. How did you penetrate our shields? Marcus allowed himself a small smile. We've had 6 months to study your technology turns. Out your shield harmonics have a predictable pattern. We wrote an algorithm A. Really good one. This is an act of war against the Galactic Council. No, this is self-defense against an aggressive fleet that fired first. We have the whole thing recorded. Every Council species in every independent world will see that you attacked. A peaceful colony, and we only defended ourselves. The silence stretched out. Marcus could practically hear the gears turning in Kelvin's head. The Council had just lost a ship to primitives. If this got out, it would be humiliating. More importantly, it would show other species that the Council could be resisted. You are making a grave mistake, human. I'm making a choice. There's a difference. The Council fleet withdrew to a higher orbit, but didn't leave the system. Marcus knew this was far from over, but they'd won the first round. News of the standoff at New Chengdu spread through human space like wildfire. Within weeks, every colony world was installing defense grids. Earth's shipyards went into overdrive, producing not just colony vessels, but armed frigates and destroyers. The message was clear: humanity would not be bullied. 3 months later, Captain Sarah Chun guided her merchant vessel, the Jade Phoenix, into orbit around a world the Council had designated as quarantined. The planet below was dying. A plague had wiped out 60% of the population, and the Council had declared the world economically non-viable for assistance. Sarah looked at the medical supplies in her cargo hold. They represented 6 months of trading and deals made in a dozen systems she had violated. Council trade regulations to acquire them. She was about to violate quarantine protocols to deliver them. She didn't care. Take us down, she told her pilot. The Council will blacklist us, he warned. Good thing we don't trade with the Council anyway. The Jade Phoenix descended through the atmosphere. On the surface, the local population watched in disbelief as a human ship landed in their capital spaceport. Sarah walked down the ramp to meet the planet's leaders. We heard you needed help, she said simply. The Council said no one would come. The Council doesn't speak for humanity. Where you want these supplies? Within hours, Sarah's crew was unloading medicines and equipment. The locals wept with gratitude. By the time Council enforcement arrived to arrest her, Sarah was already gone, having jumped to another system. But the story spread. The humans who defied quarantine to save lives. The merchants who traded with worlds the Council had abandoned. A black market became a thriving alternative. Economy species who had chafed under Council restrictions for centuries suddenly had an option. They could follow the rules, or they could trade with the humans. More and more chose the humans. The Council's trade director sent threatening messages. Sarah sent back her accounts showing how much good she was doing. You want to stop every human ship? She transmitted. There are 10,000 of us out here now. How's your enforcement budget? The trade director had no answer. The galaxy was changing. Rules that had governed civilization for 100,000 years were being rewritten by a species that had been spacefaring for less than a year, and humanity was just getting started. The Grand Assembly of the Galactic Council met in emergency session for the first time in 3,000 years. 200 species represented by their finest diplomats filled the chamber that orbited a neutron star chosen specifically because its location was inconvenient for everyone equally. High Arbiter Kelvin stood at the center podium, looking older and more tired than when humanity had first entered Council space. The human problem has escalated beyond our initial projections. It announced they now operate openly in 47 systems. Their merchant vessels trade with 63 species, including 12 council members who have violated the trade embargo, and, most concerning, they have established permanent colonies on 14 worlds that were designated as council reserves. A delegate from the crystalline Azure Concordat chimed in with harmonics that the translation matrix rendered as indignation. Why have we not simply removed them by force? We have the largest fleet in galactic history, because every time we attempt enforcement, they resist. Kelvin replied. At New Chengdu, they disabled one of our cruisers. At the Tau Ceti trade station, they outmaneuvered our blockade. At Proxima, they simply ignored our fleet and continued mining operations around us as if we were irrelevant. They treat us like furniture, grumbled the Krent war leader. It is intolerable. It is effective, corrected a delegate from the Nereids. They have turned our own restraint against us. They know we cannot simply exterminate them without becoming the villains in galactic opinion, so they push boundaries knowing we must respond with measured force. Then we stop measuring. The Krent leader said, we show them what happens when the council is truly provoked. Kelvin's head appendages drooped. The Council of Elders has authorized military action. We will reclaim the disputed territories and force humanity back to their home system. We will make an example that will prevent other species from following their path. The vote was unanimous. The largest military fleet assembled in 10,000 years began gathering at the edge of council space. 12 species contributed. Vessels, 50,000 warships carrying weapons that could crack planets. The humans had maybe 3,000 combat-capable vessels, and most of those were converted merchant ships with guns bolted on them. Council expected total victory within months. They didn't understand humans at all. Admiral James Okonkwo reviewed the tactical displays in Earth's military command center, buried deep beneath the Nigerian plateau. The numbers were not encouraging. They outnumber us 17-1. Reported Intelligence Chief Zhao. They have better shields, better weapons, and 10,000 years more experience. And? Okonkwo asked. Sir, we're going to lose. Only if we fight their kind of war. Okonkwo pulled up a historical file. In the 20th century, my ancestors in Nigeria fought a colonial power that had better weapons, better training, and better funding. The colonizers expected quick victory. Instead, they got a guerrilla war that lasted years and cost them more than they could afford to pay. You want to fight a guerrilla war in space? Zhao asked skeptically. I want to make every system they take cost them blood and treasure. I want to make occupations so expensive they can't afford. I want them to win battles and lose the war. That's going to mean sacrifices. Yes, and every human who enlisted knew that we're not fighting for territory. We're fighting for the right to exist without asking permission. That's worth dying for. The war began at the Kepler's gate system, where humanity had established a major shipyard. The Council fleet arrived in overwhelming force, expecting surrender. Instead, they found minefields, automated defense platforms, and a human fleet that attacked immediately with no warning or negotiation. The battle was brutal. Humanity lost 70 ships in the first hour, but they took down 2 Council dreadnoughts using tactics the Council had never seen before: kamikaze run ships that deliberately overloaded their reactors and rammed Council vessels, weapons that violated every Council convention on warfare. They're savages. Broadcast one Council captain before her ship was destroyed by a human frigate that had pretended to be disabled. The humans abandoned Kepler's gate after inflicting maximum casualties. The Council claimed victory, but the shipyard facilities were destroyed. The resources were evacuated, and occupying the system now required a permanent garrison that tied up ships the Council needed elsewhere. It was the first of many such victories at New Chengdu. The Council landed occupation forces, the colonists, scattered into the wilderness and began a resistance campaign that killed Council soldiers. Daily supply convoys were ambushed, officers were assassinated. The Council controlled the cities, but the humans owned everything else. At Tau Ceti, the humans used the Council's own trade routes against them. Merchant vessels pretending to be neutral suddenly revealed themselves as armed raiders. They hit supply lines, destroyed logistics hubs, and vanished before reinforcements could arrive. The Council had never fought an enemy that refused to stand and die honorably. They don't fight like civilized species, complained one Council commander. They fight like vermin. They fight like survivors, corrected Admiral Okonkwo when he heard the recording. And they're winning. But the cost was terrible. Humanity lost colonies, lost ships, lost tens of thousands of lives. Mars was bombarded from orbit and 2 million people died when the Council made an example of the colony. Earth itself came under siege for 3 months. The Council couldn't land troops, but they could cut off supply lines and bombard military installations. Sog watched from his command bunker as another strike turned a section of London into glass. Sir, we have reports from the outer colonies, Zhao said. The resistance movements are spreading. Council is pulling back from 7 systems because they can't afford the garrison costs. And how many people died to achieve that? Too many, sir. Okonkwo nodded grimly. Make sure they're remembered, every single one. We're going to win this war, and when we do, the galaxy needs to understand what it cost. The turning point came in the 3rd year of the war. Council had ground down humanity's conventional fleet. They controlled most of the disputed space. Victory seemed inevitable. Then the Battle of Kepler's Gate happened again. The Council had held the system for 2 years. They'd rebuilt the shipyards and were using them to produce new vessels. Their garrison fleet consisted of 200 warships. Against them came the Vindication captain. Elena Vasquez had refused retirement. Her ship was old now, scarred by 3 years of constant combat, but she'd volunteered to lead a suicide mission. We can't take that system with conventional tactics, Okonkwo had told her. We need something dramatic, something that will change the narrative. Then let's give them dramatic. Elena assembled a fleet of volunteers. Every ship was old, damaged, or obsolete. Crews were veterans who had nothing left to lose. They jumped into Kepler's Gate, knowing most of them would die. The Council fleet moved to intercept, expecting another hit-and-run raid. Instead, the humans came straight at them. No fancy maneuvers, no guerrilla tactics, just a direct charge into overwhelming fire. They've gone insane, the Council fleet commander reported. Elena's voice crackled across all frequencies. This is Captain Vasquez to all human vessels. We're not here to win, we're here to show them we'll never quit. Make them remember this day. The human fleet tore into the Council formation. Ships exploded, crews died, but they kept coming. Elena's Vindication ran the Council dreadnought at full speed. Both ships went up in a fireball that could be seen from the surface of Kepler IV. But in the confusion, human reinforcements arrived. Fresh ships, new weapons, technology they'd been developing in secret. Humans had turned the battle into They'd sacrificed half their fleet to lure the Council into committing their reserves, and now those reserves were dying. The Battle of Kepler's Gate lasted 18 hours. The Council lost 300 vessels. Humanity lost 400. But Kepler's Gate remained in human hands, and across the galaxy, species watched the recordings. They saw humans willing to die rather than submit. They saw the Council's vaunted fleet bleed against an enemy that refused to acknowledge defeat. 7 Council species began having internal debates about whether continuing the war was worth the cost. 17 independent species sent secret delegations to Earth offering support. The war wasn't over, but for the first time the Council understood they might not win, and humanity understood that survival sometimes required sacrifice. The galaxy was learning what humans had known all along: rules only matter if you're willing to enforce them, and enforcement requires a price someone has to pay. The war had been raging for 3 years, and the galaxy was exhausted. The Galactic Council had never fought a prolonged conflict before. Their military doctrine was based on overwhelming force, leading to quick capitulation. Humanity had no doctrine at all. They made up tactics as they went along, learning from every defeat and adapting faster than the Council could respond. In the Grand Chamber, High Arbiter Kelthon faced an assembly that was no longer unanimous. The humans have retaken 7 systems in the past 4 months. It reported, our casualty rates are exceeding sustainable levels, and 17 species have withdrawn their forces from the coalition. Cowards, spat the Krenth war leader. Realists, corrected the Nereids delegate. We have lost more ships in 3 years fighting humans than we lost in the previous 1,000 years combined. Our economies are suffering. Our populations are questioning the war. And the humans show no signs of surrendering. Then we increase our commitment. The Krenth insisted. We build more ships, we conscript more soldiers. We do whatever it takes to win. To what end? Asked a new voice. The delegate from the Zephyr Communion rarely spoke, but when they did, the assembly listened. We began this war to enforce compliance, to show the council law must be obeyed. But what have we proven? That a primitive species can resist us for years? That our mighty fleet can be bloodied by converted merchant vessels? Every day this war continues, we prove the opposite of what we intended. Kelthon's head appendages twitched. What do you propose? Negotiation, before the cost becomes unbearable for all sides. The Krenth leader roared. We do not negotiate with criminals. Then you will fight them forever. The debate raged for hours. In the end, economic reality won 7 more. Council species voted to withdraw from the coalition. The war would continue, but with diminished forces back on Earth. Admiral Okonkwo received the intelligence reports with grim satisfaction. They're breaking, he told his staff. Not their military, their political will. We just have to hold on long enough. Sir, we've lost 40% of our fleet, Zhao reported. Our colonies are barely holding. Earth itself is rationing food and medical supplies. How much longer can we hold on? As long as it takes. But Okonkwo knew she was right. Humanity was winning the war of attrition, but barely. They needed something to push the council over the edge. The answer came from an unexpected source. Captain Sarah Chun had spent 3 years running supplies through council blockades. Her ship, the Jade Phoenix, was legendary among independent traders. She had been captured twice and escaped both times. Now she brought Okonkwo a proposal. The fringe worlds are ready to declare independence, she said. 17 species tired of council control. Thief. Been inspired by our resistance. If they break away now while the council is committed to fighting us, it will split their attention. That's asking them to risk everything. They're already risking everything. The council has increased taxes to fund the war. They've conscripted merchant vessels. They've imposed martial law on systems that protested. The fringe is a powder keg, it just needs a spark. And you want to be that spark. Sarah smiled. I want to coordinate it. The Jade Phoenix becomes a symbol. We do a supply run to every fringe world that's ready to rebel. We show them they're not alone. And on the same day, they all declare independence simultaneously. The council won't be able to respond to all of them at once. It was audacious. It was dangerous. It might just work. Okonkwo approved the mission. Sarah spent 2 months visiting fringe worlds, meeting with resistance leaders, coordinating plans, building a network of species who were ready to say no to the council. On the appointed day, 17 worlds declared independence. They cited humanity's example. They quoted Captain Vasquez's words from 3 years ago. They said they no longer sought permission to govern themselves. The council's response was immediate, and exactly what Sarah had predicted. They had to respond. Their entire authority was based on the idea that rebellion was impossible, but they didn't have enough ships. Most of their fleet was committed to the human front. They could crush the rebellions or continue the war with humanity. They couldn't do both. We've split their forces, Okonkwo announced. Now we hit them where it hurts. Humanity launched Operation Breakout. Every colony that had been under siege suddenly counterattacked. Every resistance movement came out of hiding. Every hidden ship and weapon cache was activated. Humans weren't trying to win territory. They were trying to make the war unsustainable at New Chengdu. Governor Webb led colonists in retaking their cities from Council occupation forces. Fighting was brutal and close-quarters buildings became fortresses. Streets became kill zones. We're not soldiers, one colonist said as they prepared for an assault. No, Webb agreed. We're people defending our homes. That makes us more dangerous. They retook the capital in 3 days. Council forces withdrew to their ships. Webb sent them a message. Tell your leaders, this is over. We're staying. You can accept it or you can bleed for every meter of ground. Your choice. Similar scenes played out across 40 systems. The Council was losing the war not through military defeat, but through exhaustion. Their forces were spread too thin. Their economies were collapsing under the weight of military spending. Their populations were demanding an end to a conflict that seemed to have no purpose. And then came the Second Battle of Kepler's Gate. Admiral Okonkwo had assembled the largest human fleet since the war began. 2,000 ships, including the newest vessels fresh from Earth's shipyards. Against them, the Council had positioned their reserve fleet. 5,000 ships. It should have been a massacre. The battle began. At dawn on Kepler, Okonkwo's fleet jumped in and immediately split into 3 groups. The Council fleet moved to engage expecting conventional tactics. Instead, they got chaos. One human group went straight at the Council center. Another swung wide, targeting supply ships. The third went for the Council flagship. They're attacking everywhere at once. The Council commander reported, impossible to predict or counter. The human tactics were simple. Hit hard, hit fast, then give them time to coordinate. Ships were lost by the dozens on both sides. Space filled with debris and radiation. Okonkwo watched from the bridge of his flagship as the battle unfolded. Admiral, their center is collapsing, Zhao reported. No, it's a fine. They're trying to draw us in focus on the flagship. If we take it out, their command structure breaks. The human third group had fought through incredible fire to reach the Council flagship. Now they surrounded it, damaged, bleeding atmosphere, but determined. All ships. This is Admiral Okonkwo. Target the flagship. Everything we have. The concentrated fire overwhelmed the flagship's shields. Hull breached. Its reactor went critical. The explosion was visible across the entire battlefield. For a moment, everything stopped. Council ships hesitated, unsure what to do without their command vessel. That moment was all humanity needed. All ships advance. Okonkwo ordered. The human fleet surged forward. Council ships began to retreat, then to run. Sir, they're withdrawing from the system, Zhao reported in disbelief. We've won. The Second Battle of Kepler's Gate lasted 6 hours. Humanity lost 800 ships. The Council lost 2,000. But more importantly, they lost the will to continue. 2 days later, High Arbiter Keltham sent a message to Earth. Humanity has proven itself capable of resistance. The Council acknowledges this. We propose negotiations to end hostilities. Okonkwo read the message twice. They're offering terms? They're offering to talk about terms, Zhao corrected. It's a start. Assemble a diplomatic team, but keep the fleet on alert. This war isn't over until we have an agreement in writing. The negotiations took 3 months. Both sides were exhausted. Both sides had lost more than they could afford, but neither side could afford to look weak. Finally, they reached a compromise. The Treaty of Titan, named for the moon, where the final negotiations took place. Humanity would be recognized as a sovereign power. All colonized worlds would remain under human control. Humanity would gain a seat on the Galactic Council. The Council would lift trade restrictions in Exchange humanity agreed to stop expanding aggressively and to respect Council space. It wasn't perfect, but it was peace when the treaty was signed. Admiral Okonkwo stood before a memorial wall. It were engraved the names of every human who had died in the war. Hundreds of thousands, including Captain Elena Vasquez, whose sacrifice at the first battle of Kepler's Gate had made everything else possible. We paid the price, he said quietly. Now we make sure it meant something. The war was over. Humanity had won not through superior strength, but through sheer stubborn refusal to quit. They had taken a beating, but they had proven something the galaxy had forgotten: that authority is only real if people accept it, and humans don't accept things just because someone in power says so. The galaxy would never be the same. The council chamber orbiting the neutron star had never seen a human before now. It was about to host Earth's first official delegation. Ambassador Elena Vasquez walked through the corridors with her small team. She had survived the first battle of Kepler's Gate against all odds. Her escape pod had been recovered by a human patrol 3 days after the battle. The council had reported her dead. They'd been wrong about many things. The grand chamber opened before her, 200 species represented, in a space designed to inspire awe-inspiring crystalline structures, floating platforms, holographic displays showing the vast expanse of council territory. It was meant to make newcomers feel small and insignificant. Lena felt nothing but determination. High Arbiter Kelvin stood at the central podium. Its head appendages were perfectly still. Ambassador Vasquez, on behalf of the Galactic Council, I welcome humanity to this assembly. Thank you, High Arbiter. The Treaty of Titan has been ratified by all member species. Humanity is now recognized as a sovereign civilization with all rights and responsibilities that entails. Polite applause rippled through the chamber. Most of it was genuine. Some species respected strength, others were just relieved the war was over. But Elena could see the resentment in some delegates' eyes. The Krenth war leader looked like he'd swallowed something poisonous. Several species who had lost heavily in the war wouldn't meet her gaze. The path to this moment has been difficult, Kelvin continued, but it has taught us valuable lessons about the changing nature of galactic civilization. Humanity's resistance to council authority was unprecedented. Your tactics were unconventional. Your determination was unexpected, but ultimately, you have learned to respect galactic order and take your place within the established framework that has maintained peace for 100,000 years. Elena listened to the speech. It went on for 20 minutes. Kelvin spoke about how humanity had finally matured, how they had learned that cooperation was better than conflict. The Council's wisdom had guided them to this moment. It was a masterful rewriting of history. The Council was positioning the war as a learning experience. They were claiming credit for humanity's integration. They were pretending that everything had gone according to plan. When Kelvin finally finished, Elena stood. The chamber fell silent. High Arbiter, may I respond? Kelvin's head appendages twitched. Of course, you are now a full member of this assembly. Elena walked to the speaker's platform. She looked around at 200 alien faces, some curious, some hostile, some calculating. High Arbiter, members of the Council, I appreciate the welcome, but I need to correct something fundamental about what just happened here. Kelvin stiffened. Humanity didn't learn to respect galactic order. We didn't finally mature into accepting Council authority, and we certainly didn't take our place within your established framework. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. 3 years ago, the Vindication entered what you call regulated space. You ordered us to stop and submit to a 50-year evaluation. We said no. Ambassador Kelvin began. We said no. Elena repeated louder. Not because we were ignorant, not because we were reckless, but because we understood something you had forgotten. Authority is not granted. It's earned. And you hadn't earned the right to tell us what to do. The Krenth war leader rose to his feet. This is outrageous. This is honesty. You want to pretend the war was about teaching humanity our place, but that's not what happened. What happened is you tried to enforce arbitrary rules on a species that refused to recognize your authority, and when we refused, you sent your fleets to make us comply. Elena pulled up a holographic display battle footage from New Chengdu, from Kepler's Gate, from a dozen other conflicts. You attacked our colonies, you bombarded our worlds, you killed millions of our people, and we fought back, not with your permission, not following your rules, but with everything we had. The chamber was absolutely silent now. Humanity didn't seek permission to explore the galaxy. We didn't ask your approval to colonize new worlds. We didn't request authorization to trade with other species. We just did it. And when you tried to stop us, we refused to stop. Kelton's voice was tight. Ambassador, you are verging on violation of diplomatic protocols. Protocols we never agreed to follow in the first place. Elena smiled. That's the point, High Arbiter. Humanity is here not because you allowed it. We're here because we earned it through blood and sacrifice, and stubborn refusal to quit this seat at your council table didn't come from your wisdom or generosity. It came from the fact that you couldn't afford to keep fighting us. She gestured to the assembled delegates. Every species in this chamber followed your rules. They asked permission, they waited for approval, they submitted to evaluation periods and provisional memberships and all the bureaucratic hoops you created to maintain control. We showed the galaxy that your authority is optional for those brave enough to ignore it. A delegate from the Zephyr Communion rose. Ambassador, are you saying you encourage other species to defy the council? I'm saying other species should make their own choices. If council membership serves their interests, great. If not, they shouldn't feel obligated to participate in a system that doesn't benefit them. This undermines the entire foundation of galactic civilization, protested another delegate. Does it? Or does it free civilization from an artificial constraint? For 100,000 years, the council decided which species could explore, which could trade, which could expand. You created a system where advancement required your permission. We're saying that system is broken. Kelton's head appendages were quivering now. The council has maintained peace and order throughout the galaxy. The council has maintained stagnation. How? Many species are still waiting in evaluation periods. How many worlds are pending allocation? How many brilliant civilizations are held back by arbitrary rules that serve no purpose except maintaining council control? Elena took a breath. I'm not saying the council serves no purpose. Coordination between species is valuable. Trade agreements matter. Preventing conflicts is important. But those things should come from mutual benefit, not from imposed authority. Humanity is here as an equal partner, not at these subordinate species. We will work with the council when it makes sense. We will ignore the council when it doesn't. We will never ever ask permission to pursue our own interests. The chamber erupted, delegates arguing with each other, some species cheering, others demanding. Elena B. Rimaved Calvin tried to restore order. Finally, the Nereids delegate spoke. Its voice cut through the chaos. The human is correct. Silence fell. The council has operated on the assumption that all species must submit to our authority. But authority without consent is tyranny. Humanity has exposed this truth. They have shown that compliance is a choice, not an obligation. The Nereids turned to Elena. Ambassador Vasquez, humanity's defiance has inspired 17 species to declare independence. Dozens more are questioning council regulations. You have destabilized the galactic order. What do you propose we do about it? Elena smiled. Adapt or become irrelevant. The galaxy is changing. Species are learning they don't need permission to reach for greatness. The council can either accept this new reality and find value in genuine cooperation, or you can cling to outdated authority and watch as more and more civilizations follow our example. She looked directly at Kelton. The choice is yours, but understand, This humanity will never again submit to arbitrary authority. We've paid too high a price for our freedom. Captain Elena Vasquez died believing that humans shouldn't need permission to reach the stars. I carry her name and her legacy, and I will spend every day making sure her sacrifice meant something. The session ended in chaos. Half the delegates were outraged. The other half were intrigued. Over the following weeks, Elena met with delegations privately. Some species wanted to understand humanity's perspective. Others wanted to coordinate their own independence movements. A few wanted to establish closer ties outside council channels. Galaxy was fragmenting, not into war, but into a more complex political reality. The council no longer had absolute authority. They had to negotiate, had to compromise, had to prove their value rather than assume their importance. 6 months after Elena's speech, the council announced reforms. Evaluation periods reduced from 50 years to 5. Pending allocation worlds would be opened for colonization. Trade restrictions eased. It wasn't everything, but it was change, real change, forced by humanity's example. Elena stood in her quarters on the diplomatic station, looking at a photograph of Captain Vasquez, the original Elena, the me woman whose name she now carried. We did it, she said quietly. We proved that rules are only as strong as people's willingness to follow them. That authority has to be earned, not demanded. The humans don't seek permission. We take what's ours and we defend it, and now the whole galaxy knows. Her unit chimed a message from Earth. More colony ships were launching, heading for systems the council had once claimed as restricted. No one had asked permission. No one would. That era was over. Ambassador Elena Vasquez smiled. Humanity had changed the galaxy not through superior technology or overwhelming force, but through the simple radical act of refusing to accept limits placed on them by others. They had shown the universe that the only real authority is the authority you grant, and humans grant authority to no one, they earn it.